Let me say no to that. What's up, people? What's happening? I said, you know what? I wasn't going to come on, but let me just say, first of all, man, thank you for tuning in. I know it's last minute. Um, Man, my schedule just been heck of crazy. My son just had surgery late Friday, and I've been by his side the whole time since. He's in a lot of pain still. They went in through his nose and through his throat, and they did a procedure where they had to remove some swollen glands, and they ended up removing his tonsils. And they ended up doing some other stuff. So he's been in a lot of pain since Friday. Throughout the night, he can't sleep. So I've been up with him throughout the night, just trying to soothe him, just every 3 hours. I got to give him Tylenol and Advil. And then today we started the steroid treatment. And man, he can't eat nothing. Even just drinking water hurts him a lot. So, it's just been very just me having to be by his side, and haven't really slept at all. I try to sleep, when he sleeps, which isn't often. He tosses and turns because it hurts him. So just been real busy. And I had told my guests that, you know what, I was gonna have to postpone them because I didn't know, if I was gonna be able to sneak away for a while. And it's funny though, you know what? And it's because I'm his dad, so I guess he feels more comfortable with them and the way I talk to him, because when he's with his mom and his sisters, even my older son, he turns into a big old baby, and everything just hurts him more. And when I'm with him, I'm like, come on, Pops, you got this, like, I don't tell him, shut up, come on, stop acting like a little sissy or nothing like that. But I'd be like, come on, Pops, you're like, come on, just, you got to do what you got to do, chew on these ice chips. Um, what I mean? Take your medicine as I give it to him and everything. We've been giving him a bunch of ice cream. I tried to give him some oatmeal this morning that was, lukewarm, but he couldn't even swallow it. It was hurting him too much. And it was even watered down. It's just everything's hurting him. Even when he swallows, he got to take like little sips because it hurts. But that was the reason why I didn't, plan on coming on live at, my normal time with my normal guests. But anyways, I just wanted to check in because something's been upon my heart lately, and it's regarding the prison ministry. And I've been doing a lot of little like private trainings with some people that are pursuing prison ministry, and they're like, where do I start at? What do I do? And they've confessed to me that they have a heart for you know that population, and I was like, okay, well, let's sit down, let's talk and stuff, and just kind of been walking through some of the procedures with them. And what I wanted to, share today is just a little bit on what prison ministry is, and I want to share a little bit of my story as as part of the prison ministry, and how it was able to help me, throughout all them years of incarceration, trying to get close to God, trying to walk that straight and narrow, trying to remain faithful to the calling that, God called me into. And it was cool today too at church, man. My pastor was ministering on, purpose and calling, you know what I mean? And I was like, man, that's what the Lord's been dealing with my heart with, and sharing with other people. And first of all, prison ministry, I believe it is a calling. I believe some people can do it just by faith, just because they just want to reach out to people. But prison ministry, though, it takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of heartache and stuff, especially when, you're going into prisons or you're writing letters. And let me say this, first of all, prison ministry isn't simply just going behind the walls and ministering to people, preaching to people. Prison ministry is a lot more than that. You know, I know everybody, well, a lot of people that when they hear prison ministry, they're expecting to go behind the walls, have a Bible study with the inmates, be able to preach to them, be able to just minister to them. But a lot of times, prison ministry, on your part is simply just being next to whoever God's calling to minister, and praying, for that congregation, being able to stand in the gap for whatever yard you're going to, whatever prison you're going to, whatever state you're in. You're going to be praying and interceding for, that prison, that yard, that state, the leadership, the governor, mayors, all of them, all of them that play a part in the outcomes of what happens in prison, for the warden, for the sergeants, lieutenants, watch commanders, the regular COs, because all of that affects the inmate. But I was sharing with this one specific girl because she was like, "Yeah, I want to get in there. I want to minister to them." And I started sharing with her how, it might not be the way she thinks it is in her head, though, because she's thinking that she's going to go in there. There's going to be 100 people. They're all going to give their lives to the Lord, and she's going to feel good about God moving. And I try to explain to her, sometimes you go in there, you minister, and you don't see no results. You don't see no results right away. You may even be disrespected. You may be called out. You may be challenged. You may be catcalled. If you're a female, even a male, you know what I mean? They'll try to push your buttons or whatever, because not everybody going to chapel, not everybody going into the church house is there for all the right reasons. A lot of times they're just there trying to get out of their cell and pass some dope, pass a kite, pass something. And you're right there in the middle of all that. So sometimes prison ministry can take a heck of a turn. And I'm talking about going into the prisons, going into juvenile halls, especially juvenile halls. Juvenile halls might be some of the hardest institutions to go into, because them kids, man, they can be very disrespectful. I had a brother that was an ex-lifer, man, and he just became a chaplain probably about a year ago, year and a half ago. And he told me when he went in there, he was sharing his story, how he started talking about, he was an ex-lifer, this and that. And right away, somebody started yelling out to him, "Yeah, you were a rat, man. I know you were a rat. You were a punk, and you were taken advantage of." And I was laughing when the brother was telling me that, because he hadn't been into the prisons. I don't know if he's ever been into the prisons, um, in the aspect of ministering to them, from out here. And I said, "How did that make you feel?" And he was like, "Man, bro, I was getting mad. I was getting hot." He said, "But a little bit further down, as I was sharing, they started opening up and I could see the Holy Spirit moving on them." So I was like, "That's cool, bro." But at first, though, he said he was mad and he was just like trying to hold his tongue, and he was getting tripped up in what he wanted to present, because, you have all these people just yelling out as you're ministering, and it's not always the easiest scene to be in. And I told that brother, "Man, you just gotta keep on going, bro. You just gotta keep on going, and just pray for the breakthrough." And just one of the main things, when you go inside of a juvenile hall, a county jail, prison, camp, whatever, is to be very honest. And when I say honest, I'm not talking about, they start asking you what's your address, and all the private information. You're not going to give up any of that stuff. But when I'm saying honest, you just want to be transparent in your story, because trust me, man. I mean, when you're ministering in them that type of environment, they know how to read you. And when you're, chucking and jiving and you're trying to pull sheet over their face, man, they're gonna call you on it. Don't be surprised if they start yelling out, "Man, you're lying," or they catch you, twisting you up in your story. Um, it could be very challenging. That's why I tell people, prison ministry isn't as much as we want to go in there and we want everybody to get saved and we want them to get filled with the Holy Spirit and we want them to just, have that encounter with God and they're fired up for God. I said, a lot of times it don't happen like that. It just don't happen like that. It don't. Sometimes it's not until, multiple times going in there and being with the same people that they finally see the consistency in you. They finally see your heart and you're really there for nothing more but to try to impart life to them and give them hope. And then that's when they start, coming on to you and start really, really trying to, hear what you have to say. I know even for me, every time I go into Chino prison, every Saturday morning, I'm in Chino prison. And at first they're going to check you out and they're going to, see what you have to say. And at first when I went, it was pretty crazy because I didn't know about rack points. And rack points means when they go to these groups in prison, they get a good time added to, the release date. And the more hours they get, the closer they get to home. So there was some guys in there that were telling me, "Yeah, you got these 3 guys, they should be coming right now, and they're clowns. They just, they're just going to show up, and they're just, so they don't get bored, they're going to try to test you and stuff. I guess they did this to other teachers in other classes that they host there or whatever. And I was like, that's cool, you know what I mean? And as soon as I started sharing and stuff, and presenting the material that was given to me through prison fellowship, them three guys, man, I was surprised, because at first they were just asking some ridiculous questions, some just off the wall questions. And I just had to bring them back to the topic. I had to just bring them back to the moment and tell them, this is what we're here for. This is, what, I'll get to them questions afterwards, but right now I got to present this, and let's go through this material. And by the time we were done, though, they were real respectful. And I started sharing a little bit about my story, and they kind of felt where I was coming from. And afterwards, they came up, shook my hand, said, thank you, looking forward to the next class. And I've been there now, I want to say almost 6 months. I think it was like in December when I started going, or was it November? I think it may have been November. And now, man, I mean, it's like they open up about their family. They open up about their trials during the week. One guy last Saturday, he opened up and talked about how he almost got into it with one of the officers, and he's like 2 years away from going home. And he's like, man, I almost blew it. That cop was just getting in my face, and I was about to sock him. And I just had to walk him through some of the tools that we've been learning in our class. And he was like, I did that, Jojo, man. I appreciate you, like, expounding on how to just to breathe in that moment and not jump, before thinking it all out. So I was really, really patting him on his back for the way he got through that and everything. But prison ministry isn't just going into the prisons. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of times some prison ministry is going to have to be through letter writing, if that's all you can do, it to show support. And it's not even about a deep letter into the prisons or whatever. It could be just a postcard, just telling them to stay strong in their faith, keep the hope, stay out of trouble. How are you doing in your GED classes, whatever about them. How's the family doing? And trust me, when an inmate gets that little card, that little letter, they're gonna be like just like excited about it. And if you're sharing Bible scriptures with them, trust me, they're going to have it right there. And if they're going through something, and which you probably know about, they're going to read over and over again in them scriptures, man. And it's going to be life changing for them. It's possible for them to really just, have that life changing experience just through that card. I shared with you guys before how I got saved through a Bible track while in the hole, ADSEG administrative lockup. It was just right between the bunk, a little Bible track. And it was just like one of them little 2-page little Bible tracks. And it was talking about the love of God. And man, from that Bible track, that's where God started grabbing a hold of my heart and really just like dealing with a lot of my skeletons, I would say, a lot of the darkness in my soul. And God was just starting to do a cleansing. And I always tell people, I didn't get saved in a church. I didn't get saved in a chapel service. I got saved through that Bible track. So I don't know who mailed in that Bible track. I don't know how that Bible track got in that cell, but it came through some ministry. And that ministry probably have no idea who I am, have no idea of me reading it during that lockup order. And here I am 30 some years later, serving God still behind that paper. I don't want to give a lot of credit to the paper because it was all God's grace leading me up to it, but it did have something to do with it. You know what I mean? And so prison ministry could be through Bible tracks going into the prison, postcards, whatever like that. And there's even a prison ministry where you're not even communicating with prisoners, but with their families. You could just be out here supporting the families of them that are incarcerated, kind of like what I do, through my life coaching. And man, there's no greater blessing than being able to see to be in a situation where you see a family that's broken, that's hurt, that's distraught, that's just going through it, and you're able to be right there maybe in their living room, at their coffee table, their dinner table, and you just pray with them and you tell them that, you know what, you're believing that God's going to touch him or her that's behind them walls, and you're going to keep on lifting up this family. If they need anything, you're there for them. And let me tell you, that's a part of prison ministry too, being there and supporting the families. And when I say support, I'm not talking about financially supporting them. If you have the means to financially help out when you can, so be it. But I'm talking about being there emotionally and spiritually for them, being there when they can't stand on their own, when they don't know what direction to go in to be, a part of that family that's now has somebody incarcerated. Because if you've ever had somebody locked up in your family, somebody that you love, you know what, it's not an easy process to go through, especially when it comes to a father, a mother, or your kids. I mean, all around, you know what I'm saying, all around, it affects the family, it hurts the family. And they need all the support they can get, that phone call, that text, stopping by and just asking them, how they're doing, and for the most part, I've said it many a times through my podcast and me sharing my story, is that a lot of times these families keep it very secretive. It's not something that most families boast about and just share with everybody in the workplace. Yeah, my husband's busted, my wife got busted, my kid got busted. It's not something that most people brag about. It's not something that people take a lot of pride in. Depending on where you're from, though. I know some people are like, yeah, man, my son, picked up a murder case, and they're with that business, you know what I mean? They're excited about that. I mean, it is what it is, but there are some family members that take a lot of pride, when a loved one gets busted. But for the most part, it's not something that most people brag about and you know put up on a high pride mantle. It's not something that most people take a lot of pride in. But you want, for you that are seeking to be involved in prison ministry, you might want to start there, praying for them families and reaching out to them, and just showing love and support to them, because they definitely need it, you know. And it's not about being some good old counselor and being able to um tell them what to do next. A lot of times it's just simply listening, simply listening to them and just being there and showing that type of support, you know. And a lot of families, like I said, very prideful, and they may not they may not want you to know too much about what's going on. But if you happen to find out, that's enough information right there to sneak in and be like, hey, I just want to let you know that I'm praying for you and for your situation. And especially with no judgment. That's the main thing right there. No judgment. You start judging and stuff and start talking about, yeah, you know what, he deserves to be locked up. She got what she got's coming. Right away, a family could be like, don't ever answer the door for them when they come over, because they no, don't open the door for them. Trust me, family, once they feel like you're casting that type of judgment, they ain't gonna want you around. And yeah, man, so I was just sharing with people, just pray about being in prison ministry, if that's something the Lord's been putting upon your heart, because it's definitely not easy, man. It's definitely not easy, you know interacting with that type of environment, especially if you ain't never been in that environment. Because if you're not careful, you're going to get worked like a pork chop, man. For real. See, they're going to work you and work you. And next thing you know, you might even be charged with something, because I've seen it over and over again, where people that go in there with good intentions, wanting to help people, they end up falling in love with somebody, end up bringing things in that they shouldn't be bringing in, and getting caught up. And before you know it, shoot, instead of being part of prison ministry, now they're in prison. So you better be prayed up about getting involved in this, right? And then another thing I wanted to share too is you know I was talking to this girl about gang prevention too, because she was asking me about gang prevention, and what could she do to help out our community because she lives in an area where there's a lot of gang activity right now. And she was like, "Man, I want to say something. I want to help out." Um, her niece, I think, is busted. She was a gang member from that neighborhood, and she was asking me how she could help out. And that's another situation that, unless God's called you into it, you want to be very careful, getting involved with all of that, because it's not fun and games out there in them streets. And your whole approach can be, it could come back to bite you, man. Just to keep it 100 with you guys, it could be very dangerous. You go out to them streets and trying to get involved in something that you've never been involved in. And um, you know, if God's putting it on your heart, though, you know what? If God be for you, who could be against you? More power to you. I'm sure God will lead you and keep you safe and all that. But just be careful, though, because it's funny when I've been out there with some people, and right away, though, like their approach, and I'm like, what the heck? How did they get involved in this? Because right away, and it's funny too, because as an ex-gang member being involved in prison ministry, it's crazy though, because I'll hear these people go out there right away. They were like, your homeboys don't love you, man. Where your homeboys at right now? And um, they don't care about you. And I'm like, man, these people right here come, I'm not perfect at it. I'm not here to say that I'm perfect at going out there and ministering in love and all that. But I know I don't go out there and do that. And a lot of times it's because I seen the repercussions of somebody coming out and saying that, and in my head, I'm thinking like, and I'm remembering back in my days when I was young, and I grew up in La Puente, where Victory Outreach, in the early 80s, mid 80s, where they were out in them streets. I mean, man, they were always in my neighborhood. And I remember, when they would come and minister and stuff, and I would walk away and I'd be like, man, this ain't for me or whatever. And I remember some of them would, come with that hardcoreness, what I mean? No offense to any of them, but at that time, I'm young, I'm still very active in my neighborhood, and I would take it as disrespect. I'd be like, hey, fool, like, Christian or not, fool, like, you're in my neighborhood, and I would have other words to say and stuff, but I would be like, I remember though, I just remember, just some of the approaches that took place, and no shade on Victory Outreach at all. Trust me, it was all me not being ready, and it was me still just having that ugly spirit in me, right? But at the same time, though, going out there today with people, and because sometimes there'll be a brother that I know and he'll tell me, hey, we're gonna go out this weekend, like roll with us and stuff. And I don't know the rest of the team. I know that brother and I know his heart and I know what he's about. But we get out there and then people start start acting, crazy for Jesus, man. And it's all good, but I like results. I like positive results instead of just being loud and making noises. I like, just meeting people where they're at. That's always been my ministry from when God called me into ministry. And I just believe that it's just more effective just to, you know, try to meet people where they're at and let them, share where they're at and build from there, instead of just coming out and putting them down like, what are you fighting over? Somebody just told me the other day that us gang members, that we were fighting over a piece of concrete. And it was funny though, I mean, I ain't gonna put, nobody on blast, but when they were saying that, I was like, you know what? It's a lot more than just some concrete. It's a lot more than just a city name. It's a lot more than just a park name. It's a lot more than just a west side, east side, south side, north side. It's a lot of bonding. It's a lot of growing up with these brothers and going through life with them and going through the different changes in life, because I always share my story. I grew up a while back. I posted a kindergarten picture and there's like 8 homeboys of mine's in there. And I'm like, that's how far back we go back, them before even kindergarten days, and these are my friends. We grew up playing, in the streets. We grew up playing in the parks. We grew up, you know, man, just our families grew up together and everything. And as life advanced, and trouble started coming our way, it was like if you picked on one of us, you picked on all of us. And, as things got more heated and we would fight. And back in them days, we'd pull out bars and chains and switchblades and stuff to eventually assault weapons. But it wasn't necessarily just about the concrete. It was about my brothers. It was about my homies. And when I say homies, I ain't just talking about somebody from my gang. I'm talking about, because not everybody from my gang. I come from a big gang, with a lot of different, cliques, and not all of them would I wouldn't claim them all as my homies in that sense. They were all from my neighborhood, but my homies were my homies. I'm talking about these were fools I was willing to die for. These were fools that, you know what, man, it was to the hubcaps fault fell off. And I love my homies. So when somebody comes in ministering talking about, yeah, your homies don't love you, they're talking about I don't love my homies. You know what I mean? And for what it's worth, man, most homies that grow up together the way I grew up with my homies, I mean, you're willing to die for them homies. And so I just feel like it'd be disrespectful for me to show up in somebody's neighborhood and start telling them where's your homeboys at now. They don't love you, you're killing and fighting and dying over nothing. And I know from the outside perspective, that's what it looks like. Look like we're fighting over some colors. Look like we're fighting over some gang signs, but it's a lot deeper than that. The root of that evil is deep, man, in a lot of neighborhoods. I always say, man, my neighborhood has a generational curse, because there's homies today that have their fathers, their grandfathers, great grandfathers, and it goes back that deep. And for us to just walk in there and start talking about, they don't love you, and you're dying over nothing. I mean, I know what they mean, you know what I'm saying? But coming from a young gang member's perspective, them ain't the words that are going to convince me to try to change my life. If anything, it's going to be disrespectful, and I'm going to take it to a whole different, arena. And there's some little homies that have, you know what I mean? I mean, I've been with some fools that were straight gang members and now saved, and we've been out there, and people have spit at us, and people have thrown rocks at us. People have pulled out guns on us, telling us to get out of their neighborhoods. And you know, I mean, it is what it is. That's why I say you got to be real careful when you're dealing with that spirit. So, gang prevention, intervention, I just pray that you use wisdom when going out there and trying to be effective for the kingdom, because it's not all games out there, man. And not every neighborhood is going to, take some of the way we get at them. And I'm not telling you not to be bold. I'm not telling you not to present the gospel the way Jesus, gave it to you, but it's a thin line, and the way gang members take disrespect, it's not the same way you take disrespect. Take disrespect at a higher level. So when you go in there and start talking about, man, none of this is nothing, your neighborhood ain't nothing, and God's the shot caller of your neighborhood and this and that. I said, hey man, them are, I mean, hey, it is what it is, man. I'm just saying, just be careful when you're out there and coming at people that way, because you could find yourself in serious danger. So, but I do encourage you though to be about the gang prevention and intervention when possible. That's a heck of a ministry to be involved in. And yeah, it was fun with you when I got busted and went to juvenile hall. And most of you probably know this. Some of you don't though. When I went to juvenile hall, I went and I was being tried as an adult at 16 years old. I was being tried as an adult. And I'm in Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, and I get there, and I'm still, gang banging to the fullest, and getting down with all my enemies plus other fools, and getting involved in the little riots that would happen right there, and just acting a fool. And my first time in juvenile hall, I was there for 11 months. After that, I had got out after 11 months, And then I went back right away. I think like within 3 months, I went back, continued fighting and all that. And that continued, from 16 all the way to 18 years old, just in and out of juvenile hall, fighting, gangbanging to the fullest. And it's crazy though, because, you're in there and you're getting down with all your enemies. And then, you know, I'm 17 years old in juvenile hall and I'm being tried as an adult because I don't think I shared this, but once you're found fit to be tried as an adult, every time you get busted, you go to adult court, regardless of the crime. So for me, my first time in juvenile hall was for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit attempted murder, and I was found fit to be tried as an adult. So when I got out of that case and I went back for like a robbery, I went back for an assault, I was always being charged as an adult. When I went back at 17 years old, I ended up getting transferred to LA County Jail. And it's crazy though the way you got to like change your mindset from juvenile hall to LA County Jail. As soon as I got to LA County Jail, remember 17 turning 18, um it's like my enemies are no longer my enemies, but they are my enemies, if that makes sense. Because I get there as soon as I got to LA County Jail, I went to a place called 9500. And you go up there, that's like a holding, big old holding, section waiting to get called out to the modules, right? You go up there and there's thousands of people on this floor of all races. And I get there and I have probably about, I want to say I had about a good eight to nine homies from my neighborhood that were there. And I knew about four of them, 4 or 5 of them I knew. And they were like, "What's up, you little knucklehead?" These are all like older homies of mine. And I'm like, "What's up, fools? Like, what's happening?" And they start, trying to school me and give me the rundown on the, what's right and what's wrong and not to do this, not to do that. And then, I'm from La Puente, so the little SGV car, the homies start introducing me to other homies from the area. Oh yeah, there's a homie from Azusa, there's a homie from, Flores. And then they say, oh yeah, there's a homie from Bassett, and there's a homie from Belinda, and this is a homie from, here and here, and they're naming off these other neighborhoods. And in juvenile hall, I was just getting down with these fools, and on the streets, we're still trying to kill each other. And now my older homies are right here just chilling with, we're like sitting on the bunks and they're laughing and clowning like nothing. And me having my juvenile mindset still in. And I even think when I went back to the county, I still had one of my eyes was red because I had got jumped in juvenile hall right before they transferred me. And I had got jumped by some enemies. And here I was, sitting on the bunk with um, guys from the same neighborhood that just jumped me. And I'm kind of like, I'm being cool, but I'm not being cool. Like, you ever heard the story about when a father's telling their kid, like, sit down in the car, like, sit down in the car, sit down. And the kid's like, I'll sit down, but I'm still standing in my heart. And that's the way I felt. Like, all right, like, I'm being peaceful, but I'm still disrespecting these fools, like, in my heart. Like, I ain't gonna bust a spread with them. I ain't gonna share no drink with them. I'm like, hell no. And one of the guys that was there was busted for killing one of my homeboys. And I was like, man, I was like, I ain't trying to be cool with these dudes. But the mindset, though, let me just tell you, the mindset of a gang member going from juvenile hall to county jail, from being on a rampage of your enemies to now getting along with your enemies. And then after a while you start getting close to, I'll be honest, during my time in county jail, there was a couple of dudes from from enemy neighborhoods, but kind of got close to them, not trying to, but just they were cool people. I mean, just keeping it real, they were cool people. And it's funny though, because even though they were from my enemy neighborhood, we knew some of the same people, and I was like, dang. And they started talking about the movie theater. We're talking about the Puente Hills Mall and this and that. And I was like, dang, fool, like, when these fools hanging out over there? And, we would just have these conversations and it's kind of messing with my head. But the further along as you stay there long enough, because I ended up staying in the county jail for quite a few months fighting another case and got close to these dudes or whatever. And then I end up getting out of there, go back to the streets. And now I'm still like gang banging still. And it's like, okay, I went from juvenile hall, gang banging hard, county jail, not gang banging hard on my enemies, to going to the streets and still gang banging. And then I get busted, go back to county jail, not gang banging again. And then when I go to, after, my whole LA County jail experience, and now, I'm found guilty, I'm being sentenced, and now I'm going back. And now I'm going to YA, California Youth Authority, for the first time. And if you know anything about the California Youth Authority, it's straight gladiator school. It's like gang banging to the whole next level. Now, I mean, if you're in YA and you're gang banging, you're like, you're it's like at a high level compared to juvenile hall. Now it's like, it's crazy though. I won't ever forget when I first got off the bus. I was right here in Chino in YTS, Himaji Stark Youth Training School. I got off the bus. We're walking from R&R to the unit, and there's this football field, right? A righteous football field, football goals and everything. They play tackle football in YTS. And there's a trade line. It's called the trade line. And the trade line was going back to the unit, and it's all cement. It's like a regular street, right? Like a two-way street right there. And man, there was like probably like 10 guys going at it on the football field. They were going at it hard, like just like really like boxing, not like. And let me tell you, this isn't just juvenile hall kids, like 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids. These are anywhere from 18 to 24-year-olds, right? Because you could stay in YA till you're 25. And I get there and I see these guys going at it, about 10, 12 of them going at it. Come to find out, it was two LA gangs going at it. And I'm like, dang, like that was crazy. Like I've never seen that before throughout juvenile hall, throughout my county jail experience. I've seen riots, but not like straight gang riots like that. You know what I mean? I've been to car shows, prior to me getting busted and going at it. There'd be like two neighborhoods going at against two other neighborhoods and stuff. That happened before. We're at the Pomona Fair in my neighborhood, and another neighborhood that we're close with bumped into some of our same enemies, and we were going at it at the car show. And so here I am in YTS, and you get these rules. As soon as you get there, you have 24 hours to get down with your enemies. If not, then you're considered leva and stuff, and your mindset comes back to that again. Like you're leaving county jail where you get along with your enemies. Some of these enemies are going to YA with you. You get to YA, and now you're expected to gangbang to the fullest. And in YA, it's not just boxing. You have enemies stabbing each other in there, everything besides shooting each other, But there's like righteous weapons in there, and people are really trying to kill each other. And for reals, it turns into a bloodbath in there at times. And then so from YA though, and you're in there gangbang, then you go to prison, and it's like LA County Jail all over again. Now you got to get along with them once again. You be in YA trying to kill each other, then you get to prison, and it's like no more fighting. And that's crazy. And then you get them people out on the streets, and you're trying to do some gang prevention, some intervention. You're trying to, lead them to the Lord. And you see all the different, I share that because I need you to understand where these people's heads are. You got a lot of people that have been in there, that have been backstabbed, they've been betrayed, they've been set up, and now you're out here trying to convince them to walk away from everything, that you have a better way of life for them. And a lot of times it's hard for them to believe that. It's hard for them to trust people. There's a lot of trust issues, with us coming out of prison. I've shared before, my homie, my dog, ended up getting on the stand and testifying against me. And so whenever somebody tries to tell me they have my back, I was like, shoot, I know what that looks like, like that's not even a good saying, not for me. You don't want to say you have my back, because the last person that told me they had my back, ended up giving me 45 years to life. So I'm just sharing this information because, when you're out there, you gotta be as wise as the serpent, the Bible says, and as gentle as the dove when dealing with people, because it's that population, man. That population has definitely been through some issues, and there's a lot of trust and a lot of respect, that's expected when you approach these guys, because that's the standards that they've lived by for years. So when you start being disrespectful, you start coming at them foul, you start belittling their neighborhood, you start talking bad about their homies that they love, that they've cared about their whole life, their family, their brothers, or their sisters, and you're over here talking about, man, your homeboys ain't nothing, And I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it. I understand 100%. But you just have to use a different approach when dealing with us gang members, and trying to save us, because um, by putting down the neighborhood, putting down their homies, and talking about everything they're doing is stupid and worthless, it Ooh, it gets a lot deeper than that, For you to come in and just say something like that, trust me, a lot of people will consider that disrespectful. And being disrespectful, Christian or not, there's somebody in that neighborhood that's going to want to deal with you. And it might be a humbling experience for you, but and I'm not trying to discourage nobody from going out there in them streets and ministering, because that's what God's called us to do. But just just be familiar with who you're talking to and what's going on in that environment, because it could go a long way, man. And trust me, you could save a lot of souls by simply going out there and just strictly sharing the gospel. Jesus loves you. God wants to promise you eternal life. He loves you right where you're at. Come to him as you are. All them key points will win souls more so than going in there and talking about they stupid and they dumb for what they doing. you know Trust me, most of the time us gang members already know that. We don't need you to come and tell us that we're stupid and dumb and all that other stuff, you know. And like I said, I'm not the best street preacher. I'm not the one that has it all figured out, but I'm just trying to share just some of the wisdom that God has given me over the years to be effective in dealing with these people, you know. And when I say these people, I'm just talking about that gang environment, that population of people that they live by a different standard, you know. Their code of ethics is totally different than most people's out here. And a lot of it is based off of respect. So the more you know how to show respect, the more they're going to give you respect and allow you to, reach into their heart. So just a word of advice, But anyways, I didn't want to be too long tonight. I just wanted to touch base on what God's, been doing, with my life, with my ministry. Um, for me, I kind of just that's what God called me to, man. I always tell people, man, I wish I could just be focused on something totally different, but that's what my life is surrounded by. Every single day, I get a phone call from prison. I get a letter from prison. Not every day a letter. Almost every day, though, I do get a phone call from somebody. There's multiple people I talk to from prison that call me. I don't mind. The calls are free anyway. If I have the time to talk to them, I do. There's a lot of times I don't get to talk to them because I'm working, I'm busy. But for the most part, I try to answer every call. Um, every letter I get, sometimes I try to respond. Sometimes, hate to say it, but sometimes I don't get around to writing them back. I just get caught up. If they text me through the Get Out, what is it called? The Get Out app, GT. I always forget the name of it. What's the app? Oh yeah, the GTL, the Get Out app. If they text me on the Get Out app, I'll text them back. I always keep at least like $40 on the app so I could text them back. Sometimes I'll slap them with a photo of something somewhere where I was at or something, just to kind of let them be a part of my life out here. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to touch base on that prison ministry talk that I recently been having, and also the prison ministry trainings I've been doing with some people. And that's it, man. I'm grateful for all of you guys. Next week we'll have our guests back. I have a couple of guests lined up coming up, some good stories. Um, and yeah, that's it. Actually, I have this girl coming in. I forgot the date. I forgot the date that I have her coming in, but her husband's doing life without parole right now. And she's a good girl, man, that got her husband's back. And even though he doesn't have a date, she's being supportive of him. And I know she'll probably get a lot of backlash because a lot of times people be like, why are you even waiting for somebody like that? Just go on and move on in your life. And I always tell people, that's what they were telling my wife. That's what they used to tell my wife. And what's so funny about it, sometimes it was even my own family that was telling her to move on, that I'll never have nothing to offer her, that she needs to get on with my son and live her life because she was still young. I left her when she was 17 years old. I was 17 years old when I was getting my life term. Actually 18 years old. I was arrested when I was 17, rearrested. Um, and she was raising a baby on her own. And yeah, a lot of my family was telling her, like, you should just move on. This fool ain't never going to change. He ain't never going to come home. But look at us now, man. All things are possible with Christ. Got four beautiful children. About to be a grandfather. We've been together now, man. I mean, 33 years. We just celebrated 33 years in April, and that's all through God's grace. I know it wasn't my charms and my looks that kept her by me, man. That was all God. Definitely all God, keeping her in my corner. And I share that though because a lot of times, people are going to tell you, for all you prison wives, all you prison husbands and mothers and fathers that are supporting your loved ones incarcerated, a lot of times you're going to get backlash like, why are you wasting your time on them? Let them figure it out. They put themselves there. So let them figure out, how they're going to survive in there. And that's cold talk, man. For reals, I get it though. A lot of us have burned our bridges by constantly going in and out and running amok and causing more damage than good. But there's a lot of people that have changed their lives in there, not when they come home, in there. A lot of people have changed their lives in there and have come home and have been very successful. And there's them wives that have waited for them. And you know what? They get to be a part of that blessing going forward. I know it's hard. I know it's sacrifice. I know it's not easy, you know. I know sometimes we have them phone calls coming home that just like rattle our cage and make us wonder why am I dealing with this, you know? And a lot of times I always share with families that I coach. I said, you know what? Majority of the times when we call home and we're nasty and we're just foul, I said it don't even got nothing to do with you for reals. It don't. It's everything to do with what's going on in the prison. It's everything to do with the tension that's all surrounding us right in that moment. And when we call home, you're the only you're like the only security we have when we call home and we're able to indulge with our real feelings because we're not sharing any of them feelings in there, because that's a sign of weakness and stuff. So when we call home and we're like just sharing, a portion of our heart, and a lot of times it sounds like anger and all that. A lot of times it's just frustration. A lot of times it's just, um, it's not even hatred towards you. It's just being angry at situations. So try not to take it personal. Try not to trip, when your husband, when your wife, your kid, or whoever calls home and they're tripping. Don't let that be the reason to be like, you know what, for now on, I'm not going to go visit them. For now on, I ain't going to accept their call. For now on, they don't got nothing coming. Just give it time, let them cool off. Trust me, 9 out of 10 times they're going to call back and say, you know what, I apologize, I'm sorry. They may share with you, what was going on, but most of the time it's not even about you. It's not. It's about something that's going on in there. And a lot of times I tell people all the time that, we're not going to share with you everything that's going on there. I don't know which inmate would actually do that, just share everything that's going on in there. I know for the most part, most of us don't share what's going on in there because we don't want our families to worry about what's happening. We don't want them to, unless there's some righteous injustice, we're going to be like, hey, get an attorney. I'm telling you what's going on right now. These cops are trying to kill me. They're trying to set me up or something. Yeah, they're going to tell you something like that. But for the most part, just sharing their regular feelings, um, it's not going to happen too much. So don't get too angry at them when they're going through that with you. But other than that, just wanted to thank all of you for tapping in today. I know it's beautiful Sunday out here in Southern California. It's been some good weather down here, man. It's starting to get hot though. And man, when these streets start getting hot, it starts getting crazy out here, man. To blame this heat for a lot of the craziness that happens. But just wanted to thank you guys for tapping in tonight. And um just want to thank all of you too that knew that my son went into surgery. Want to thank you guys. Look, remember I was telling you I get jail calls? Let me show you. Look, I got a jail call coming in right now. I should answer it, huh? Put them on. But I don't know who it is. But I'm telling you, I always get jail calls all the time. But anyways, I'm gonna not accept that right now because they'll keep coming. They'll call. But hey, I wanted to let me put this up here real quick. Let me show you something. Uh, mm, where is it at? I had it in here. Um, I thought I had it. Oh, let me see. Oh, so if you go to my web page, www.trapfamilies.com, what is that one? The overcoming anger and frustration. Oh, that's a free video that I did on how to deal with anger and frustration when dealing with your loved one's incarceration. I put a video together. I believe it's a 5-step video, totally free. If you go to that website, you'll be able to see it. Um, I also wanted to encourage you, though, to check out my webpage at www.trapfamilies.com. I do have a discovery call in there that's totally free. Okay, totally free. All you have to do is set up, just put your email, and then you're going to create like a little password, and then you're going to go um, to the discovery call, and then you pick out a date and time throughout the week that you would like to do a video call with me one-on-one, and we could talk about seeing how trap families can help with your situation. And it's kind of like a free coaching call. My normal coaching calls are not free because they're very consistent, and they're very time consuming. So, of course, like everything else, you want to get paid for your services, but the discovery call is totally free. If you would like to talk about a situation that you're currently in regarding your loved one's incarceration and how you could help out with them, like kind of get some support, go ahead and tap into that free video call. You pick the time, you pick the date, and then I'll respond. I'll get an email and I'll respond back to it. Also on there, I do have my coaching calls, and I do have an online community that I kind of ignored for a while, but I'm getting it back going again. And this online community, let me explain it to you, okay? It's not like a regular Facebook page. It's not like a regular group page where you could just go log on and interact. There is a subscription to it, and the reason why there's a subscription to it is because in this community, I do a lot of live calls with people. It's like a Zoom call with people that are going through things. A lot of times, I'll have some young girls talking about their visit, how it went bad, and then we have other people that are in there that are giving some feedback, and it's kind of like a little group session, you know what I mean? And it's a part for my members. So the reason why there is a subscription to that is because if it's free, like everything else that's free, people will take advantage of it and won't value it. So the thing is, when you do pay for a subscription, we know that you're coming here for some righteous help. It isn't just, you know, dudes trying to hit on the girls, or girls trying to, bang on some other girls, or people just trying to just troll people within it. Because I mean, unless you're a baller and you want to pay the subscription to just come in and troll, I'll eventually get rid of you. But for the most part, if you're putting some money into something, you're not going to come in here with the funnies, not going to come into the community and just be a jokester and try to waste everybody's time. So that's the purpose for the subscription. um you could check that out too. It's my online community. Go in there, like I said, once a week. I do get on there and we'll just discuss whatever's going on, like how was your week, and you guys just share. And then there's other people on there that are going through similar situations, and they share how they're getting through it. um there's a lot of different things that go on in my online community, so you definitely want to check that out. I'm gonna start really, really engaging the online community. um for a while I was kind of just so busy and wasn't really trying to spend a lot of time in it, but I'm definitely going to start putting some more time into it and putting more um just putting some more stuff into it, because I know it's important. I know it's valuable. And I know that, God's called me to do that. So I'll definitely be partaking inside of the online community. And it's real easy to get onto. All you do to go to my web page, go to the community, and then it'll guide you through there how to become a part of that online community. And you'll see, man, it's pretty cool, just being able to discuss stuff that everybody in there is going through similar situations, whether you're a guy or a girl, young or old. A lot of times it's I think a lot of our topic is a lot of the visiting, how they were fighting during the visiting and wanted to, see how they should go about the next step. How should I approach it going forward? And yeah, it's been pretty cool, man. So encourage you to go check that out on my WW website. And then that's pretty much it, man. I'm gonna head back to the room and go check on my son, make sure he's all right. He was taking a nap. I told my wife to watch over him real quick while I came over here. But you guys have a great week. I'm gonna go ahead and tap out for now. You guys have a blessed week. You guys take care of yourselves, and I will see you back here next Sunday with a guest. I got somebody coming in. Yeah, the next four guests, man, some good stories. I got a couple girls, couple guys, and some great stories, man. But if you haven't hit the subscribe or the like, be sure to do that. I appreciate it. All your support matters to me and to the platform. Share it, man. Be sure to put it out there. Share it with your friends, with your family, whoever you might think. And once again, if you know anybody that you feel would be a good guest on this platform of Trap No More, man, send me their names, man. Send me their numbers, or give them my name, give them my number, have them make contact with me so we could get their story out there, man. All right. So with that being said, God bless you guys. You guys take care, and I will see you guys next week, if not sooner. God bless you guys.